So with the paper, we now have a journey. We know what the date is. Not a lot else has changed. You could probably say, but from our perspective, when we started these conversations, there were 4 options open to maintained and single academy schools, and anyone looking at becoming a multi-academy trust. We believe now the first option is now been removed, i.e. the one that said do nothing. Next slide, please, Will. And Jeff's just going to talk to you about why that's been removed.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, absolutely right. I think every one of us knows what the direction of travel was from 2010, which was every school to be an academy. And then around about 2015, every school would be in a multi-academy trust, and they stopped talking about single academy trusts. But up to the white paper, there were 3 main options. There was a 4th one, which I'll briefly touch on, but there were 4 main options. Option 1 was do nothing. If you had good data, if you had good finances and governance is good, and your relationship with the authority and relations with the RSC were good, why would you make any changes? And I think every one of us on the call would say, why would you make a change if something was working? And that absolutely was completely understandable. The caveat to option 1, do nothing, was always to have a plan B in case something comes along to hurt you. And that's either going to be a white paper, or it's going to be a poor inspection, or it's going to be a change in focus from the RSCs, etc. Or it's going to be most of the schools around you go to the academy sector and you're the last man standing. So have a plan B. That, I think, for me, talking to 2 RSCs recently, that option now seems to have gone. And when I actually put both RSCs actually nodded. They didn't answer it, they nodded, which in essence is an answer. The reason I say that is the white paper was very, very clear in its terminology. The terminology was every school will be in a strong trust or in the process of joining a strong trust by 2030. There was no ifs or buts or our direction of travel is or our desire is. It was all schools will be or in the process of. So in reality, option 1, when I actually said to both RSCs, that means option 1, do nothing, have a plan B, is effectively gone. Both of them nodded into that one. So we now know, as Mark said, we have 12,000 maintained schools still to convert. We have 8 years. I don't think they'll personally get there. That's 1,500 a year on average. At the height of the Academies programme, they were doing about 1/3 of that. Sometimes it was a half of that. So where the DfE would build extra capacity to get to that 1,500 a year, it remains to be seen. But in reality, Mark, you're absolutely right. Option 1, now not an option in reality because of the white paper.
Yeah, and in a way, as I say, I'm really trying to be as positive as I can around this, because I think that helps a lot of people with their decisions. And I know we'll come on to Kerry's thoughts on this, but it almost removes the other options for you of federations and other things like that. And it does give us a direction, and it does give us some guidance. How we get there is probably talking to companies like us and them sorts of things, because it is a big deal, as we know. If we could just flip on, please, Will. So these 2 haven't changed, but 2 and 3, Jeff, they become the main options, right? Join or create.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And Matt, you're absolutely right what you just said then. Absolutely, that now actually we do have a definitive time, and we have a definitive year by which schools need to make a decision. So in reality, the question mark has really gone, because we now know that that's what the DfE's requirement is. That's what the government's requirement is. So it allows us to start asking questions and having conversations. Option 2, join an existing multi-academy trust, or if you're a single academy trust, an empty mat or a small mat, option 2 is the same. Join something larger, because rightly or wrongly, and I personally believe it's wrongly, the DfE has this: if you're a 10 school mat, you're better than a 5 school mat. If you're a 15 school mat, you're better than a 10 school mat. They talk about numbers, and it's not about numbers, it's about the skill sets and the desire and the mindset to do what's right. And there are many, many maintained schools, many SATs, many empty mats who are performing, punching above the weight, doing superb work, operating far better than some of the very, very large multi-academy trusts. But in reality, option 2 will be the option that stays the next 8 years. Option 3, when we come to it, I think there's a window, and then that one will sadly be starting to be taken away. But option 2 has always been, and it still always will be, for maintained schools, empty mats or small mats, or even medium-sized mats, join a multi-academy trust or something larger to create something bigger. The caveat there is always to do your due diligence robustly and choose the trust wisely, because you need to know when you go into that trust that they have the beating heart of your school at the core of everything they do. And that comes down to due diligence, which is one of the future sessions that we'll do in the Coffee Club. But in reality, this option here has always been available. It's the one option that will last the next 8 years as well, Mark.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of our questions that was asked before the session is around when does the journey start? We'll come on to that. Thanks, Will. If you could just move on, and then we'll just briefly recap on this one, which is the fascinating one for me. I love this.
Mark, you're right. Option 3 has always been there. Create your own or grow your own. Create your own as in a group of maintained schools coming together. We now know most regions are actually still looking for 5, if not more, schools to actually create a multi-academy trust. I've had conversations with RSCs over the last couple of months where they're saying they will only allow new multi-academy trusts where they don't have enough strong multi-academy trusts in a specific area. I have a problem with that, as you know, Mark, and Kerry knows, because what that's saying is we're having to fit schools into an RSC's template. And an RSC who is a civil servant who doesn't know the beating heart of every school in his or her region, rather than building a template around the school, that's where we need to be. So option 3 has always been there. Create your own if you're a group of maintained, grow your own if you're a single academy trust, an empty mat or a small mat. And most of us can do that very, very well because we understand what that looks like. We understand what growth looks like. We just need the white paper and RSCs, who will soon become regional directors, to actually support us in this journey. It's it's a bigger deal for a single academy trust going to a 2-school mat than it is for a 9-school mat going to a 3-school. In reality.
Yeah.
So option 3 has always been grow your own or create your own. The caveat there is choose your partners wisely and do your due diligence robustly. Know that you can create something bigger than the sum of the parts. My worry, talking to RSCs and the DfE over the last month, is this option has a window of opportunity, because the closer we get to 2030, the more multi-academy trusts that there are in a region or in a local authority, there will be a less opportunity to create a new multi-academy trust the further we get into this next 8 years.
Yeah.
So when I put that to RSCs and I said my personal belief, and this is my personal belief, and please feel free to do with that as you will, my personal belief is there is a window of opportunity over the next couple of years for groups of maintained schools to create their own, for us single academy trusts, empty mats and small mats to come together to create something that's on a trajectory. The white paper, as you may all have seen, the white paper says they want the schools or trusts to be on a trajectory of 10 schools or 7,500 pupils. Well, a single academy trust or empty mat going from 1 to 2 is a big, big journey. It's a doubling in size. Going from a 9 to a 10, it's not a massive journey. So we need to have the conversation with RSCs and the DfE. We need groups of single academy trusts, empty mats and small mats less than 10, because the trajectory is 10. And we need these groups coming together to have a voice. It's easy to ignore one voice. It's really difficult to ignore 5, less so 10, less so hundreds and thousands coming together to say, we need a seat at the table, making a decision for our schools for the next 8 years minimum, going on to the next 125 years of academisation.
Yeah, it's hard to argue if things are being done in the correct way and education's being improved and single academies and maintains are converting and they're doing it wisely with good proper planning. it's hard to argue against one becoming two, isn't it? I feel from a common sense point of view, because we're still on the journey. 2030 is a date that's been given, but let's get on the journey. Let's do things in a right way. We've been asked many times, are we pro academy? We're very pro academy, but it's about doing things in the right manner, because as it says there, it's about building a legacy rather than and getting things done, ticking boxes and things like that. This is a huge deal for our schools.
Mark, I think the issue, the big worry for me is I don't believe anyone can turn around to 2 single academy trusts or an empty mat or a 3 school mat or a 5 school mat merging with a single academy trust or 2. I don't also think it's an issue for 2 outstanding or 2 really strong single academy trusts or empty mats coming together to create something that's bigger than the sum of the parts, which is working for their locality. It is a civic structure. It is helping the beating heart of their locality. Why would we not allow that? Why would RSCs only start talking about large mats, 12 to 20 schools, 10 schools, 7,500 pupils having viability? I think it is misdirection, effectively talking about 10 schools, because 2 schools coming together is a big enough journey, and they'll do something really, really good, really well in education for their children, for their staff, for their parents. And we have to have that conversation and that ability to be heard and listened to, rather than a one-size-fits-all template, because one template does not work.
I know that's one of the questions, actually, Jeff. Generalisation and how that's viewed and stuff like that. We'll come on to that. Do we want to just touch on the partnerships option? If you could just move forward, because it does need a bit more explanation, this one.
Yeah, I think there was a try before you buy a few years ago. David Carter, previous National Schools Commissioner, brought it out, and then it lasted about 4 or 5 months because he realised that it could be open to abuse from both sides. What happened was Sir Gavin Williamson, which I still find, and I see Kerry smiling there. Sir Gav brought out last year a service level agreement. It was called a partnership agreement. In essence, it was a try before you buy. It was for those schools or trusts who wished to consider joining something else, a trust, but didn't wish to make the decision now. And what it would do is work collaboratively in partnership with that trust. If you look at it, and if you actually ask the DfE, it's a 12-month kick the can down the road scenario. That it isn't a because at the end of the 12 months you're still expected to put an application in to join that mat or walk away. The worry I've always had here, which is what I brought up to the DfE and the RSCs, was what happens if a school, let's say a maintained school, kicks the can down the road by partnering with a trust for a year with no intention of ever joining that trust. And at the end of the year, the partnership agreement ends. And then what they do is they sign up another partnership agreement with another trust, kicking the can down the road for 12 months. And the RSC said it's a one-time hit. You may get a second opportunity, but don't think that this is a way to stave off making a decision about converting by being a partner and then being another partner and then another partner, or waiting for a general election where someone else might actually overturn the academies programme. So it kicks the can down the road for a year. In reality, it doesn't solve an issue. Yes, you can do good due diligence in that year, being a partner of that trust and seeing if that trust works well, but it can still be open to abuse from both sides. And I think the DfE have cottoned onto that.
Yeah, definitely. It does. Seems like an awful lot of work for a school, but for schools to do that they can back out of quite quickly. It just doesn't seem to be a viable option for me for the amount of time it's going to take. Okay, thanks. We're gonna that's the slides, guys. Now we're going to go over to questions. Will, could you just unshare that? We'll come back to this slide at the end. So, Kerry, I've got some questions for you that have been on my lips, everyone's lips around the white paper, and what your initial reaction is. What's changed for you?
Well, in terms of the white paper, I think I sat here in the first coffee session, and I was here to champion the unsung single academy trusts, and all the great work that goes on across the country in those outstanding schools, and really, the headlines that we were tackling were, not sustainable, not viable, and I came on, with Jeff and yourself to say, actually, in the academies world, single academy trusts can be successful, and I still sit here and agree with that to this very day. So my thoughts on that haven't changed. But what I have welcomed is that there's been something that has been defined. So, it reads, all schools will be a part of the process of joining a MAT by 2030. Okay, so now we've got something in concrete. Where have we been as a single academy trust talking about multi-academy trusts? Well, I'd say probably in the last 5 years or even more. I've been with the trustees, and we've been at option 1. So do nothing. We've been at option 1, but we've been with conversation about plan B. So we've been on the plan B journey now for at least 5 years. And those have been conversations around, what does MAT growth look like for our single academy trust? What does it look like in terms of understanding the change for us? What does it look like understanding the people that would be involved in that, understanding resources, understanding capacity, understanding legalities, understanding we were one of the first academies to convert in 2011. Our articles would change if we moved to multi-academy trust, but what does that look like? What's the implications for us? So we actually have been on a journey of MAT growth, but it's been plan B. It's been, what if something comes our way where we need to take action? And the white paper for us is the publication which has led to us thinking, okay, we need to take action. So we've had lots of discussions and we've talked about it, but now that our discussions are going to move up a notch, and our discussions have intent now, and our discussions will have actions, and that's the difference for our school and where we are. Now, when you read the white paper, it refers to maybe tackling the underperforming schools first into going to the multi-academy sector. So in terms of whether a school's had 2 consecutive Ofsted reports, which is less than good, so those schools will be looked at first. So some people might perceive as, oh, okay, well, I'm a single academy trust, we're outstanding, all we're good, so I'm just gonna maybe sit back and let that journey for those schools evolve first. For me, I see it in a really different way. For me, I'm not going to be the last one standing, where someone else is going to decide which multi-academy trust we join, because joining a multi-academy trust for any school, whether you're maintained, whether you're a single academy trust, whether you're an empty MAT, and you're going to become a merger with other schools, it's got to be right. And we've spoken about this in other sessions, haven't we, about a bit of a matchmaker of it's got to be the perfect match for you, and it's got to be right. You've got to have the right people around the table, you've got to be like-minded, you've got to share the right values. And it's more so what's written on your website, isn't it, of what that school shares, its morals, on its values, on its ethos, on its philosophy. For me, it's got to be something tangible. So you've got to get around the table, you've got to get into those schools. So for me, actually, I've got a level of excitement now. Yeah. We've had plan B. I do believe single academy trust can be sustainable. We're proof of that. We were the first to convert in 2011. Our Ofsted report was outstanding. Yes, it was a number of years ago, but our data, our governance, and our finance continues, and our teaching and learning to show a product of outstanding. And for us, we've only got stronger since that last Ofsted report. So for me, I'm still a true believer about our single academy trust, but something's coming our way. Someone with higher powers than me, has published the white paper to say, actually, the journey for the education system is going to move to a multi-academy arena. So, well, I want to be ahead of the game. I'm like, right, okay, we've had discussions. I feel like I've got a good understanding of the academy world. I've been really privileged to have, the chair of governors and a member to be Jeff Marshall, who's sort of like taken me underneath his wing in the last few years. And now it's more like I'm itching to find the best solution for us, which is the best multi-academy trust for us. I'm a true believer, not to jump into these sort of 5, 6 up to 10. I think a single academy with a single academy trust, or a single academy with a maintained coming in together, who both have strengths, is a really good position to start with. You can build some really good capacity together to then grow, maybe schools that do need to have a look at a more of a succinct improvement strategy and how that would look for them. So it might come as a shock. I didn't run a mile.
No,
No,
absolutely.
and I think that maybe some people will be in a different position than I am. But I think no matter what you are in terms of a maintained, whether you're an outstanding or you're a good single academy trust, whether you're in an empty mat, I think sort of like embrace it and take control. And for me now, my worst fear is not taking control and waiting to say 5 years down the line, where, as Jeff explained, there is a reluctancy to develop too many multi-academy trusts. It's so many multi-academy trusts within a local authority to have so many number of schools within each one, sort of that 10 to 15 range. Well, where does that leave us? And I want to take control before someone else takes control of that for us. And I think the message is to sort of embrace this and move with it, and do your homework. And
Yeah.
we're gonna do lots of due diligence discussion, should I say it, at the next one. So we won't go into sort of that too much now. But this is just initial reaction. And that's sort of personally my position in the journey that I'm in, because I've talked about in the last session as well, about actually there was a fear that I had, a fear of what does that mean for me as a head teacher? What does mat growth mean for me? Is there progression in my journey as a head teacher, or does somebody else start making the decisions about my career? And do I have to reapply for my position of a head of school, because there might be other candidates if you go into a larger multi-academy trust with maybe more experience or different experiences than myself? So where does that leave me? And that fear is still going to be there, I think, for all head teachers. And we spoke about being very honest and open in the journey of growth, and in the journey of what next step and option you take with your leadership, in particularly your heads of school or your head teachers or principals. So that's for me a real personal area, that I talk about on the journey. But for me, as I said, I didn't run a mile. I actually I'm now becoming excited, and I want to do it tomorrow. I
Well,
want to take
yeah.
control.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's given you, I mean, not that you needed it, but the green light is almost okay, right? Okay, that's made my mind. You had other options.
Yeah,
We know that, and one of the pleasing things would, one of your options might have been outside of education, which is not
yeah,
what we want to hear, obviously. So it's almost, this positivity is being reinforced to say, okay, one of the first converters. Now I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be straight. Your journey's already begun, hasn't it, Kerry? You're off and
yeah,
running.
yeah, definitely. And the option one to do nothing was the best for our school. The plan B was if we were hit with something. So rather than sort of hitting against that and maybe burying the head in the sand, I'm thinking that in the long term, or even thinking leaving it for someone else's problem.
Yeah,
You might think, well, actually, there's 8 years. Well, where do I want to be in 8 years, or where do we want to be? Jeff,
yeah,
as a trustee of Park Road. And actually, we've always said that I'd want to leave Park Road better than I found it, and that's always been the main aim. And I see this journey. It's been presented to us now while I'm in headship. I'm in headship now here. I have a responsibility for Park Road along with the trustees and the members. So we're going to do what's right for Park Road. You know, there's lots of caution, and we'll probably talk about that, in the next session, or even if it evolves today, if we have time. There's always caution with growing a multi-academy trust. So I'm not blinkered from that. So, you know, my excitement isn't the fact that, oh, great, you know, we're going to have collaboration with another school or two other schools in the next sort of 2 to 3 years. There's lots of caution, and I know about the caution. And I really think that sharing the journey of caution when growing a multi-academy trust is going to be really beneficial to those others who might sat there, you know, either listening in today, or even those that haven't joined us. If we can get the word out to sort of like not follow our path to say it's the best path, but to follow our journey, to say, well, this is our journey, and these are the blocks, the stumbling blocks along the way, because it's not going to be an easy ride. You know, when we talk about due diligence next week, that's when we really go into the nitty gritty and the hard work that goes on behind growing a multi-academy trust, because by no means is it an easy task to do.
No, absolutely not. We're going to answer a question. Julie, you got your hand up. What would you like to ask?
Yeah, I'm sort of sat on the other side. I was a single academy trust. We've already joined a multi-academy trust and we're growing. My concern is due diligence from a good multi-academy trust takes time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if 8 years sounds an awfully long time, but no multi-academy trust would want to grow too quickly to give the best service to each school that's coming in. So therefore, you could be looking at maybe 3 schools a year, possibly coming in. So the longer that these maintained and SATs leave themselves, the harder it's going to be to join a trust in that time.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Julie. That's you know, that's something that we find, and why I sort of like sit here and say, you know, I don't want to be the last one standing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And it doesn't mean rush in and, you know, but start looking and doing your due diligence now.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Julie, my company converted your single academy trust. It was excellent single academy trust. Did everything right. That everyone was fine. The data was good. Finance was good. Governance was good. You put out what was needed. You did it really well. Your journey in your school then took a different direction about joining a multi-academy trust, and now you operate in that multi-academy trust. And I know that multi-academy trust because we did all the conversion work for all of them. And you've created something bigger than the sum of the parts. And on Friday afternoon, Julie, you and I were talking about what your trust has done, what you saw in your journey from a single academy trust into a MAT, was growing the capacity of the central team was important before you grew the number of schools in that trust.
Absolutely.
And your journey has provided robust due diligence both up and down, and then you've embedded the school into the trust. You've protected the identity and the ethos, which is what we've always talked about is really important.
Yeah.
And what you haven't done is you've not grown too quickly to then say, we're going to take X number of schools per year for the next number of years, because you're not going to do due diligence properly if you set yourself that target. What you've done is organic step change growth, and it's worked because you look at what your trust now puts out. It is bigger than the sum of the parts, and it is recognised as a really true robust multi-academy trust. And that journey is something that all people on this call needs to understand what that journey looks like. So, because sometimes it can be done wrong, and yet, Julie, you're an embodiment in your trusts of how it can be done properly.
Absolutely. And as head teachers, I would say definitely, as you say, do your due diligence, because there's certainly no head teacher in our trust has lost their identity. They still run their own schools. They've still got their voice for their school, and that is important to you.
Definitely. There was a massive worry about head teachers and how they were feeling through this whole process. And, you know, as parents, you look at it and you're horrified because you're like, all these amazing people could be forced to do something they don't really want to do or whatever. But hopefully there will be solutions for everyone. And, you know, Kerry's reaction has been a really positive one. And it's like, OK, what's next now? How do we go forward? And I have Kerry's journey's already begun. And Jeff and I are really passionate about supporting Kerry and all the schools that want to convert, to say, as long as you do it right, please, I'm sure everyone in the government are going to be okay. These guys are showing a track record of success, planning. and they're doing it from the right perspective with the right values, that's got to be listened to, which is what we're about here, to try and understand and share.
Yeah, definitely.
So there was a part of the white paper talked about local authorities and their ability to, everyone's this reaction and their ability to be able to create multi-academy trust. And it, for me, my personal perspective was, it seemed like a little bit of a cop-out from the DfE to say, okay, we're going 2030, we're all going, we're on the charge, let's do this, guys. Happy days, fantastic. Right, you know where you're going. But there was that little but around the local authorities, and I've already heard about local authorities trying to, you know, that are going to start creating multi-academy trusts. And I've been in education 20 years now, and it's like, okay, you've had your chance. For me, that's my perspective. It might sound brutal, but it really is. We've got one vision, and we need to follow that. I don't see personally how local authorities are going to fit into this. And Jeff, I know you've had lots of interesting conversations about this this very subject. For me, I don't have a problem with it as long as there's a strong criteria for a local authority to be allowed to do that.
Mark, I think my first reaction when I saw the white paper in that section, my first reaction was, this is an attempt to buy in local authority support to get the remaining 12,000 schools into the academy sector over the next 8 years, which is pretty much what the DfE has done over the last 6, 7, 8 years, buying in the support from the two churches. And my worry has been, first off, they would have to change the legalities of the Academy Act about the LA local authority associated people. My second worry was then there are some local authorities who've done this with a view to retain some elements of control, and yet 3 authorities in the last month have gone RI for children's services, and 2 of them have actually been approaching schools about, would you be interested in joining an LA MAT? So my worry has been schools that have potential, and don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking authorities off. Some authorities are outstanding, some are not. But it's the same with trusts, and it's the same with maintained schools, and it's the same with companies. It's all down to the people. So what I did in preparation of this meeting was actually contact an RSC off the record. And the RSC's response to me this morning, thankfully, said, the white paper confirms that the LAs would be able to propose a MAT, but they would not run it. It would have been set up in the same way with the usual rule for trustees. The only concession is that members could be the majority LA officers. They could only set one up if there are not enough strong MATs in the area. And that is telling, because where do we go with an authority that's got, say, 50 maintained schools outstanding, but there are 5 strong multi-academy trusts that tick the box of what a strong trust now looks like, because we now have a definition of what a strong trust looks like. Now, if there are a number of strong trusts in a local authority, why would a local authority expect to then set up a trust? Because in reality, it's not going to run it. It might have the majority LA members, but it won't have the people who run it who are as LA people. So it won't have the trustees and the CEO who will be local authority people, because there's too much of a conflict there. And on top of that, they still have to change the law anyway. So, but I've also heard over the last few weeks, local authorities saying, certainly to church schools, you've got 2 options. Either join the diocesan MAT or you join our trust. I've even heard a local authority say, if the fact that you have not converted in the last 11.5 years clearly shows you wish to be part of ours. And I'm thinking, that's smoke and mirrors, it's misdirection.
Yeah.
I can't believe most schools out there would say, I haven't converted because I love the authority so much, and I would want the authority to do that. There may be schools that say that, but I don't predominantly think that's the reason why schools have not converted today. So I worry about the lack of detail. I worry about the dangle this carrot, which in reality is the local authority involvement in a MAT. It's not a local authority MAT. we need to make that quite clear, actually, that actually what the DfE is saying, what RSCs are saying, is it won't be a local authority in MAT. It will be a local authority involved multi-academy trust that still has to tick all of the boxes. The separation has to tick the boxes of the white paper. It's got to tick the legalities of not having 19.9% more than the local authority associated people. So I think we need to get lots more information about how an authority can do it. And even then, there'll only be a few areas that will be allowed to have involvement in a MAT. Because if you look at some authorities, they've already got 3, 4, 5, 6 strong trusts. So I don't think we've got enough information, but I think it won't please the local authorities when the extra information comes out, and we're expecting the extra information to come out in July.
I just, from a legal, from a finance funding perspective, it just sounds like it needs a lot more clarity around that, because it just sounds like it could cause more problems than it solves.
Matt, sorry, Matt, can you imagine, Matt? Can you imagine a local authority who then takes all of the GAG, the general annual grant of all the schools, it takes it in, it then top slices it, which is what all multi-academy trusts in reality do, and then it expects all of those schools to buy its own service level agreements via its own list, its own chest list, or its own SLA list. Is that not a conflict of interest? I personally believe it is a very, very big conflict of interest.
Yeah, I think my personal concern is about the false advertisement of the local authority MATs, and I think that there will be some schools, when you listen to this initial talk around local authority MATs, is that some schools may perceive this as a safety net because they've already been underneath the local authority, especially maintained schools, up until this date, and they're thinking, well, we have this partnership already, this strong collaboration with our local authority being a maintained school. Therefore, this is going to be a very easy transition, and possibly view this as a safety net. Actually, we'll just go into our local authority's trust. But actually, there's what Jeff said is actually when the fine print comes out around what a local authority multi-academy trust look like, it's really important that schools who are considering these possible multi-academy trusts within the authority still need to do the same due diligence, because the local authority trusts will still have the same responsibilities of any trust being created, and they still need to have strategy, they still need to build capacity from somewhere, they still need to have pace on how they're going to take all these schools in, and ensure that when we talk about school improvement, don't we, and I think sometimes we have lots of questions come in about the educational side and what outcomes they are for the children, and I think sometimes we talk a lot around this, and we miss, don't we, that the point of actually this is all about children's education and children's future, and this is this in the best interest of the children? That's always we should come back to. But it does worry me that there's schools out there that might jump into this local authority offer very, very well too soon, should I say, before really understanding what that's about, because they feel that there's a bit of a safety net. So Jeff, for more information around that, just for the education to other schools and settings, really to talk to them about what that means. But I also think, there's those lines that you shared about what the local authority multi-academy trust is, but I think there needs to be even further clarification, doesn't there, and further responsibility from the government about what that really looks like, and maybe RSC talking a bit more to their regions about that as well. So it's a little bit of a grey area, I think, at the moment. I don't know too much about it, I'm going to be honest. But when somebody says to me a local authority trust, I automatically could think of there's a safety net for maintained schools to jump into, but quite falsely.
There's someone asked me the other day who was outside of education, what's the academy, what does it mean, what does it mean to schools and education, and it must be about improving children's education. And I actually said, well, funny enough, schools don't normally academise for that reason. They academise for a lot of other reasons that give them options to subsequently improve children's education. And it's you know, it's not the be all and end all to academise to improve education, and that's, I'm okay with that. I think giving schools more options to be able to provide better resources, to be able to collaborate, to pay better wages, to keep as many good people in education as possible is really important for me, because obviously it's one of the most important things that we do. So, but then I read the white paper, and then I look at the stats about why academisation is here to stay. It doesn't add up for me. And some people could say, well, so what? It's a good thing, right? But the generalisation doesn't work for me. It doesn't add up. And Jeff and I, you and I have talked about it, where you can get stats to back up any kind of argument. If you've got the endpoint there and you want the stats to support your argument, it's not that simple, is it?
No, I mean, the old adage is this: statistics and damn lies, and you can use statistics to actually justify any argument you want, because you can pick out elements of the statistics to show that. I'm with you, Mark. You and I have had this conversation so many times over the years. Schools don't convert because they think the day after conversion their teaching of English or maths will be better than it was the day before. That's not the way it works. When we converted on the 1st of January 2011, it was because at that time we couldn't change what we couldn't do what we wanted to do. We couldn't do wraparound care. We couldn't do extended services. We couldn't change the curriculum, and we wanted the extra 10% of our 100% centrally devolved budget. Our authority was top slicing 10%, and we got a mediocre, in our opinion back then, we got a mediocre service from the authority. We thought we could use that 10% to actually do better for our children and our staff and our parents by actually making better decisions with that money. That was our reason. But generalizations, I hate. The older I get, the more I hate generalizations, because no two schools in this country are the same. No two schools in a multi-academy trust are the same. No two multi-academy trusts are the same, and no two local authorities are the same. So why do we generalize it and say, and why do we use statistics to say that there is now an argument, there is now a call for having the law look at these statistics that have been put out, saying that academisation improves outcomes? I wouldn't have even said that in the first place. That, you know, ultimately it's what's right for that school. And if the hook for academisation was to be, I don't want to be the last man standing and be told where to go and what trust to join, that sounds a negative, but it isn't. It's a positive decision, because it's forced that school to make a decision as to what it wants for the future of its school for the next 125 years. And every school in this country will have converted for its own reason. There is no such thing as a generalised reason. Everyone on this trust who's part of the trust will have converted for their own particular reasons to do what's right for their locality, for their children, for their staff and their parents. And that has to be protected and understood. And I can't abide bringing out generalisations and using statistics just to actually have one side of the divide or not. If a school down the road doesn't wish to convert because it's right for it, then that's fine. Let's back that school. If a school down the road wishes to convert and create a MAT, as long as it's right for its locality and its school, let's back that decision. And if the school down the road wishes to actually convert into a MAT, let's back that school's decision because it's right for that. And they're all different options. And we have to protect the individual school rather than actually generalising and using generalised statistics to back an argument, which I think is childish.
Yeah, and just to back up Julie's point earlier about, you know, okay, we all know where we're going, but really due diligence, multi-academy trust mergers, joining, it's a lot of time. It's an enormous, and it's a huge risk to, if you're not taking it seriously. And I know lots of people on the call that are planning their next moves between 5 and 10 schools. It's like, where are you finding the time? What resources have you got to start with? And I know you've got to do this, but you know, there are lots of things to consider, and the investment doesn't seem to be matching the paper itself in terms of, okay, guys, we know you might have to approach companies. There's some funding here. because obviously you've got your day jobs to do as well, i.e. running and running schools, etc. That was a bit lacking for me in terms of, okay, we know where we're going. There's going to be some funding, but it wasn't the right kind of funding for me in terms of getting these decisions right, ensuring that schools can have time to spend with companies like ourselves, Jeff, to say, okay, this is a good thing. This is what you'd be doing. Otherwise, it's an extended day again, isn't it, for heads and CFOs and finance officers, SPMs, etc. It's just more work. So, yes, we know where we're going. There's lots to do. Head teachers are under pressure. They've always been under an amazing amount of pressure. The journey's started. We've got lots to consider. Jeff, what do you think is going to be the next thing for the RSCs? What are they? They're going to become directors. What do you think they're going to put? How do you think they're going to respond to some of these requests for clarity?
That's a good question, because I've been asking a number of them for clarity and asking them to go on record, and I must admit I've been hit with a brick wall about asking RSCs to go on record, which I think is a perfectly reasonable request. Absolutely. To ask of a civil servant who is paid by taxes to actually go on record and actually say that this is what I'm looking for in this region. Mark, you know, Kerry, you know, Julie, you know what my thought processes are, is that it's become a postcode lottery wherever you are. There are 8 regional schools commissioners. They will all change to a regional director in September. We will go from 8 regions to 9 regions. Yes, the regions are going to change over, and they're going to be more akin to the Northwest, Northeast, rather than, you know, really, really strange ones. But in reality, we still have 9 people from September interpreting the white paper and the DfE's desire for a fully academised system differently. And it might mean that you'll have some RSCs who welcome SAT growth. You might have some RSCs who don't. You might have RSCs who will favour new multi-academy trust because there is a need for it, and it's been built properly. And you'll probably have some regional directors from September who say we don't really want many new trusts because we want to grow our existing trusts. I struggle with that because it's a postcode lottery. We have one white paper, we have one DfE aim for a fully academised system, and yet we're going to have it mistranslated 9 times around the country. So it becomes a postcode. I can't for the life of me see that's right. So I think what will happen is RSCs will have a plan right now, what that white paper means to them in their regions. I think they'll have a map on the wall looking at where the trusts are, where they don't have enough trusts. And I reckon what they'll do is they'll start sending the message out, and with the greatest of respect, and this again is, you know, everyone who knows me on this call knows I call a spade a JCB. I think what you'll have is bland messages coming out of the regional schools commissioners' offices, which and if they're on record, it'll be even blander than that. And I think it'll be conversations behind closed doors where we'll actually get a true feeling and a true understanding of what each regional director is going to look for over the next 8 years.
Yeah, I think Julie said this as well earlier. 2030 sounds like a long way off, but there's an awful lot of schools that have got to convert. And if we're going to do it properly and ensure that 2030 is not one just big mess, we've got to have a lot more constructive conversations with the RSCs to say, okay, what's the model here, guys? What is favourable? Why can one school not become 2? Surely that's a good thing. If they're doing it in the right way. It does feel like, I mean, I'm not wishing my life away, but 2030 might be a bit too ambitious for me. It's going to be interesting. Will.
Mark, sorry, can I just come back to that one point? We've just had an election. We've just had elections about who goes onto the head teacher boards around the country. Yeah. I saw one stat. It's second-hand this, but this stat, I haven't verified it yet. There is one head teacher of a single academy trust sitting on a head teacher board in this country. I struggle to see that. There are some head teacher boards who don't have a special school head teacher or a special school MAT CEO sat on that head teacher board. So my worry is they don't understand everything about their region if they don't have a cross section of people who understand all sections of that sector. So if you don't have in your region, if you don't have a single academy trust head teacher or CEO, if you don't have a special school CEO or head teacher, how can you understand and make a decision for that when an application lands on the desk about creating something that actually you don't understand? I'm struggling to come to terms with that one. And what I've said in a recent blog is we all have to have a voice and a seat at the table, whether you're a maintained school, whether you're a SAT, empty mat, small mat, large mat, mat that's on a trajectory, long-term mat, brand new mat, RSC, DfE. We all have a seat at the table because it's happening to us.
Yeah.
And we have to be involved in the decision making for our futures, not have that decision taken behind closed doors in a regional schools commissioner's office without us being involved in that conversation. I don't get that.
No, I agreed. And we started these sessions with an objective to give the schools that hadn't converted a voice, because everyone, 2,000 SATs, mats, empty mats, etc. Was it 9,000, 10,000 maintained schools? That's still the majority. Still the majority, or just about the majority. And giving them the voice to actually do things in the right way was our objective here. Kerry, I was just going to leave you with one more question in terms of, please don't take this the wrong way, but now the speed dating has begun. It's been, I think it was yourself that told me that, you've had head teachers come to you now since the white paper's been issued because they've found you on this, in your network. That's true, right? So head teachers are now talking to yourself about merging, joining.
Yeah. I think the white paper, I think, is what those who have sort of like maybe sat on the fence for a bit or taken that option oneers, literally, have now thought, well, actually, I think we might need to do something about this. So there are a few head teachers. I know that Jeff's come across some from schools in not too far distance. When we talk about due diligence, we'll talk about how location of your other schools as well. And they've started to say, well, actually, maybe we should have a chat, or should we have a meeting and have that initial discussion? We tried this 4 years ago, Jeff, was it? Of sort of opening ourselves up just to say other schools, maintain SATs, empty mats, come to us, we'll do an open evening, we'll just have a chat. And a bit like maybe a speed dating night, eat some nibbles, a drink. And we'll just talk about, especially with Jeff's background, he can talk about the academy arena and the possibilities and go through those options. All options at that point 4 years ago were very much on the table as well, because obviously it was well in advance of this paper, although I think there was always rumours that this was the direction of travel for us all. And no one wanted to come. Yeah, so like no one wanted to come to the party. I literally had that feeling. I never knew how that felt before, but we had that feeling. No one wanted to come to our party. And so we kind of parked it and was like, right, nobody's ready for it. Nobody's ready for where we were to get that initial conversation going, really. Only last week, it's funny, we've spent all these years with nobody really sort of knocking on our door or attending our parties. Yet Jeff has been approached by a couple of head teachers for that initial conversation, because it's real. And I started this session talking about intent and in talking about action. And I think the sort of realistic path now that schools need to take is becoming a little bit clearer for them, possibly. I mean, I think the waters are still muddy in the understanding of the process and what that entails. Which quite rightly, because if you've sat there on option one for so long, you've not been exploring possibly that plan B. So some schools are really on the step one or even pre-step one of what to do in this current climate now, following the white paper. So it's good, it's good for us because we've been ready at plan B. We've got, also Jeff to support us in that travel of direction for MAC growth. So we're sort of, the party maybe have started again, and the doors are open for some more talks around it. But it leads us into quite nicely the due diligence, which is going to be our next session. So those initial talks are very initial talks, but actually, how do you go? How do you go about merging, and is it the right school for you? And we've got lots and lots of discussion around that, and I know we're quite passionate about how that's done. Julie, you've been through that. So I don't know if you're going to join. If you join in the next session, Julie, as well, then maybe we can go, come to you on some of those due diligence questions and what worked for you, because I know that you work closely with Jeff on that. So you possibly talk about the reality where we're here really talking about those ones who are in our position or, on the very early stages and what that looks like for them.
Definitely.
So,
yeah, Julie, we'll have a chat after if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, Mark. Yeah.
Brilliant. Unfortunately, I've only got a couple of minutes, but there are a few other things to say. I mean, we've penciled in the 12th of May for the next session, which is going to be around due diligence and what that means, what that looks like, because it's a massively important subject. And Jeff and School Business, Jeff's company, our company, we've been doing this a long time, and it's a business tool. It's a set of business tools and principles to ensure you get the right outcome that you want for your school and your business. So we can help you with that. We can explore that, and we'll also bring Julie in as well and talk about how that worked for Julie, if that's okay with you, Julie. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
There was a question I saw from Peter.
Yeah, so we come to the end of our allotted time. If anyone wants to stay on, they can. Peter asked an excellent question, which we can either answer now or take it offline, is how do MATs find the unmatted schools? Is there a list publicly available, and vice versa, of course? Thanks, Peter.
Sorry, Jeff, you're on mute.
Yeah.
I can answer that one, Will. Peter, it's a good question, and I get asked that all the time, to be fair. Where can I find a list of schools? There are two things you can do. The first one is GIAS, and you can go on GIAS and you can filter GIAS to find those academies. The second one is the DfE publication list. So if you Google DfE, academies, publication list, it's an Excel spreadsheet of all the open academies around the country, and you can filter it by local authority, you can filter it by single academy trust or empty mat. So there are a number of things. There isn't actually an updated one where you can just download it and get every single academy trust, every empty mat or every maintained school. You have to filter it across these several websites. So GS is a good one, Schools Web Directory is another good one, and the DfE publication list, and you can filter all of them into areas, maintained schools, single academy trusts, and multi-academy trusts as well. So it's a bit of work, Peter, but those three, GIAS, Schools Web Directory, and the DfE publication list are a really good way, a really good tool for you to find what you're looking for.
Good man. I might have that 12th of May wrong. I will, after this session, Becky and Will and I will distribute the slides for this and session 4 dates, and that's obviously going to be on due diligence. Kerry, Jeff, you got any other thoughts before we end the session?
No.
I think for me, Mark, is that every school has the right to make a decision for what it needs, and it now has to, in my opinion, it has to be the head, the chair, the governing body. It's got to now have a conversation with itself about what it wants. Why is it doing this? What does it want for the future? What will be the utopian route? Is it staying as you are currently, kicking the can down the road? Is it, which is not a long-term one, is it looking at joining? Is it creating? Is it growing, etc.? Have that conversation and then seek advice from others, seek advice from other schools, external companies like SBS, like ours. Actually get more information, because the more information you have, the better the decision making that you will make, and the better decisions lead to better outcomes for children. So I think it's really timely that actually every school has a discussion now. Look at inwardly, seek external support, then make a plan as to how you're going to move it forward. because you start answering questions before others have them. And that's the safest place to be. So I think that's what I would actually advise everyone on this call to do now, is go away, have conversations internally, seek external support, make better decisions, and then come up with what you want for your school for the next God knows how many years.
Couldn't agree more. What a good point to leave us on, guys. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined us. Please tell your colleagues that we're running these sessions. They're collaborative, they're for you. We've obviously got Jeff, who's converted more schools than anyone. We've got Kerry, who's living and breathing it. We've now got Julie, who's joined the group, who's actually on the other side, so we can give you all sides of this story. And together, I think we can make right decisions for our schools. Thank you, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark.